We're live.
Okay, welcome, folks. This is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. It is Tuesday, April 21st. And we're still on S-193, though now we're on the part that deals with the forensic facility. We have another legislative council person here, Katie McFlynn, who deals with human services and healthcare issues. So Katie, come on up and welcome.
Yeah.
And the dog and pony show of you and Eric today. And if you're willing or able to, it'd be good to share maybe with the committee, you were just on the healthcare committee.
I was, yes.
And I think that was the first time they had a walkthrough
Mm-hmm.
of the bill. The four chairs met today, Representative Lalonde, Representative Black, Representative Wood, and myself to talk about this bill and kind of figure out how we're going to approach it. It's going to stay in House Judiciary Committee with the respective committees are putting in their amendments through House Judiciary. I know that in our meeting with the chairs, there was a lot of concern from the other committees as well. I would just be curious to know what maybe the questions were from healthcare or what some of the thinking might be, so it helps us figuring out language as well, because everything, I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe some themes that
Yeah. Okay.
could be a help, because we deal here directly with corrections.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of concerns with all of this being under the custody of the Commission of Corrections.
Mm-hmm. Katie McFlynn, Office of Legislative Counsel. I will say I spent about 20 minutes with healthcare, and this was their first time getting, any type of walkthrough or information about the bill. So I think a lot of their questions were just trying to wrap their head around the concept and what population we were talking about. So they spent a lot of time trying to just sort of nail down in their minds what population we were talking about. There were some questions. I felt like there were a lot of questions about where is the facility? What does the facility look like? Are the populations in the forensic facility combined with the general population? So that was sort of a theme of just trying to get a sense of what is the facility. And we talked a little bit about how this bill leaves that open-ended, and that there's a little bit of a chicken and an egg with the department, DMH having testified that in the past they've sort of had a physical facility proposal, but based on the direction that the legislature's conversations went, that maybe the facility they had identified would no longer be appropriate after the legislature had put certain parameters on the program. So this time they're sort of coming at it a different way and having the policy piece in place and then deciding what the best facility might be. And I'm sure they've said the same thing to you.
Do they have any questions about Medicaid funding? Is
No.
that something?
They didn't ask anything about Medicaid funding.
I just wanted to ask, I'm not sure if you or Alice, are there members on the committee still that have talked about this in past years and that have an understanding of any of this?
Yes, there are a few, and some of the, we talked a little bit about how this proposal was the same and different from past proposals. We talked a little bit about how a big difference is that DOC is operating this. Another big difference is that in some ways, the population served is, narrower because it's individuals who are alleged to have committed these serious crimes. But also in past years where maybe we were just looking at individuals' mental illness or developmental disability, this is substance abuse and TBI and dementia. So some aspects it's broader. Trying to think of what else we covered. I mean, I wasn't there very long.
Just helps us a little bit. I think our colleagues are probably pretty much in the same spot that we are.
Mhm.
But there was no discussion of Medicaid funding.
No, There's some discussion about involuntary medication.
That's their world,
Mhm.
for sure.
Mhm.
Okay. So Katie, you've got the section that deals with the actual facility.
Yes.
Evaluations and assessments, I'm assuming, maybe.
Yeah. Let me,
And that would help Katie, that might help along process of moving this bill along. It might be good when we come up to certain parts of what Katie's gonna go through, that we give her a thought in terms of what we're thinking on our end. Like where it says under the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections, we might wanna have an agency of human services,
okay.
possibly. Rulemaking, want rulemaking, maybe we want a feasibility plan that you come back with next year. In terms of how you perceive this coming to fruition. Those type of things, okay?
Can I just plant the seed too? One of the things we've been talking about, sort of not in any detail yet, is the possibility of contracting out to other states who have forensic facilities. So New Hampshire has one coming online, New York State has one. What it would be like to ask the question about whether or not that provides an opportunity to contract out,
Mhm.
like a compact, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on that legally, but.
I don't know that it would be a compact necessarily. It sort of sounds like you're just allowing DOC or whatever entity ends up being the responsible entity to enter into a contract to provide the services out of state. And this committee is probably more familiar with I am that you have inmates that go out of state now, and the extent to which Vermont law follows them out of state, or which
Yeah.
so I think those are, some of the issues you would be dealing with.
It's the experience that DOC has had, the states have over the years, I'm aware of. Is if you have, for DOC, if you have the DOC in a state-run facility or a county-run facility, then the laws of the state is what the facility operates under. So our inmates will be subject to that state's laws pertaining to correction.
The other states,
Our laws will not pertain.
which would be interesting because on the one hand, if you're talking about competency restoration program, I'm assuming the services might be sort of comparable, like competency restoration. But would the other program also have sort of the other half of what is being proposed, which is the housing of individuals who are not guilty by reason of insanity? And I don't know that a program in another state would have both pieces, or if just one part of the population would move to another state and the other part of the population would be in Vermont.
That's what, and that might be part of a feasibility plan.
Mm.
The agency will look at options for out-of-state placements.
Mm.
And some of the thinking was in the interim before, because folks right now are languishing in DOC. And so there could be 5 or 6. What we've heard at the rationale for this particular bill, for keeping it, for having the facility in corrections is for the people who are already there. So the thinking, and we know it's not appropriate, so if we could have out-of-state placements in the interim between now and when we actually do stand up a facility, forensic facility, so that the people aren't languishing. That's kind of the thinking of the committee. Yeah.
Medicaid will not cover for out of state, but
I don't believe so.
I don't think so, and I can't recall anyone asking that about. We talked about Medicaid.
I mean, is that even possible then? Like if you had like involuntary treatment being, administered in another state when somebody's under the custody of Vermont,
I don't know.
yeah, it seems they could get sticky.
Yeah, I would think, I don't know.
New Hampshire's gonna be way more restrictive on mental health, I think.
Yeah, I'm just going by what transpired with DOC.
Mhm.
In fact, they did have contract with the county in Massachusetts, to house some of our inmates, and I think after 8 months, we moved them because it was pretty bad. And it was under Massachusetts law.
Do you recall when that was?
Probably
Fires.
15 to 20 years ago, 15,
Oh, really?
I would say about 15 years ago.
was gonna say about 2009 or 10.
Yeah.
Inmates, just regular inmates?
Yeah,
It had to be before 2000 or,
no, it was after that.
really, I would have been all over that if you,
No, it was before.
Huh.
It's 15 would be 2011. I think it was around 2010, 2011.
Yeah. So around that time, I remember Senator Sears took a trip down there and saw
Oh,
it.
yes, it said we're out of,
We
we're
got that
we're
contract,
out of there.
we're out of there. He's in Franklin, Mass.
Yeah,
Franklin County.
yeah.
Contract ended June 30th, 2012.
Mary and I, we got it. Oh, wait.
I left VSEA, so that's again.
It's not good. Anyway, sorry, Katie.
This is probably a tangent question, but it just sort of dawned on me. What we're working with is what the top or not top, but the 13 most egregious felonies.
I don't even think it's.
I thought we were talking about murder, rape.
It's not your listed. It's not your listed crimes, I don't believe. It's those that are punishable by life sentence. There's a dozen of them, but I don't think it's your listed crimes.
Okay, yeah, and I guess where I'm going is if someone were convicted of shoplifting. We're talking about a small population, 5 to 6 people a year or something to that effect, is what I've been hearing anyway. And that's because it's only these
It's because this offense is punishable by life
lifetime
sentence, and the
incarceration.
person needs to be held without bail. It's only a few charges
Right,
that,
are held without bail. Okay, I got that, that's
but
basically.
But it's folks within that, it's not necessarily someone with mental illness, it could be someone with intellectual disabilities.
Right.
It could be TBI, it could be your brain's fried,
Right.
substance abuse, it could be dementia. So it's not just mental health issues, people are
Right.
tending to think it's just mental health issues, but it's
Right.
the
Mhm.
so.
So, Katie.
It's all yours, Katie.
round up.
Putting you on the hot seat.
Well, what would you like to talk about? So I've heard there's an interest in a feasibility plan. So should we start there?
Why don't you just walk through what is current?
Okay.
What's in the bill, and I think that will spur some conversation.
Okay.
Back around. So
I'm starting around page 15. So this section 4 has a definition of a forensic facility. So that could be a place to start, or that could be a place to finish after you've had the rest of your conversation and then come back there. A qualifying condition means a condition, whether mental, congenital, or traumatic, however acquired or developed, or any other circumstance that resulted in the person being determined incompetent to stand trial or in GI. We have language about an evaluation would be required under the chapter conducted by a contract that's entered into by BGS and the evaluation providers. And then this subsection B is really where all the list of clinical guardrails, for lack of a better word.
Good question. So for the facility, this is Title 13, so we're in Title 13, not Title 28. But under Eric's portion of the bill, trying to find, because it talks about qualifying condition.
Mhm.
What definition would be used for qualifying condition? Would it be incompetent to stand trial? Not guilty by reason of insanity, because we have
Either.
reason I'm asking is we've used, I'm trying to find this where we just talked about it with Eric, the qualifying qualifying, okay, so like this place says, it's like on page 4. State's attorney demonstrates by clear and convincing evidence at a hearing that the person suffers with a qualifying condition that upon the person's release will create a substantial risk of bodily injury. Is that qualifying condition the same as the definition in here? Or
Yes.
is there a different?
No, I think it should be the same throughout. As used in this chapter, yeah, that would apply.
That would make sense.
I don't know, is it that conversations with Eric, it appeared as if it would need to meet section 1. A 1, 2, 3, and 4.
On page 1. Yeah,
Trying to find out where I put it's made pursuant to some restoration. I will try to go back. Where- So qualifying condition, wherever that is used in sections 1, 2, 3, 3, it pertains to the definition here. Either you're incompetent to stand trial or not guilty. Reason of insanity. It has nothing to do per se about A 1, 2, 3, 4 to a certain extent. Because we were talking somewhere with Eric, remind me folks, and they said, because part of the qualifying conditions is that the person could create a substantial risk of bodily injury to another person. That is not a qualifying condition.
that's added in that section 4.
Mhm.
The person has to be have both the qualifying condition and upon their release would create a substantial risk of bodily injury.
Okay, I'm confused. Where does that say that in section 4?
Page 4. It's the language you read to me. If the state's attorney demonstrates by clear and convincing evidence at a hearing held pursuant to
Right.
other subdivisions, that the person suffers from a qualifying condition that upon the release would create a substantial risk of bodily injury to another.
So the qualifying condition is the person's either incompetent to stand trial or not guilty by reason of insanity.
And they have either a mental traumatic condition. That's the lead-in language for that definition. So qualifying condition. Where?
Page
There it is, 15.
15.
Means any condition, whether mental, congenital, or traumatic, however acquired or developed, or any other circumstance that resulted in the person being determined incompetent to stand trial, not guilty by reason of insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it gets even more pinpointed in the not competent section and the NGRI section.
Right.
Shall I keep moving or do you want to stay there?
No, I'm just thinking, okay, I'm just thinking way in advance. How we change this and then what does it do to the section that judiciary's been. Yeah, that's what.
I'll move.
So I've got a question further up. In A. So it's a locked facility, it's in DOC, DOC would provide secure evaluation, treatment, and care. of the person. And it would be, and is required facility is required for the custody control correctional treatment. What do we mean by correctional treatment?
That's a good question.
Folks had.
Mhm.
If we ever use that, I've never seen that term used before.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have a good sense of what correctional treatment means.
It's just a flag.
Mhm.
And I think this is the only place that uses rehabilitation, which to me feels different than competency restoration. So rehabilitation seems to me to be broader than competency restoration. Or a determination as to whether or not competency can be restored,
But remember, this is for two populations.
right? NGRI, yeah.
So, that's sort of a policy
And-
decision. Is rehabilitation the goal for the NGRI
Right.
population?
Yeah,
Because if you're not guilty, you need to be rehabilitated.
But that could be you.
I definitely need it, but like, but I don't know if it's appropriate in this case, right? If
so really,
somebody,
that and that, yeah. And if you get rid of correctional treatment and rehabilitation, all you're left with is custody and control. Yeah, that's a little clunky as it connects to the rest of the bill. Anyway,
They are definitely different things. Does that have a purpose?
just gonna do a word search on rehabilitation. That's the only mention for.
So it might be interesting to think, I mean, right now, the way this definition is structured is within the world of DOC, is sort of how I'm seeing it, it's through that lens.
Hmm.
If we shift it where it's not under DOC, what would we want the definition of forensic facility to look
I wonder
like?
if it would,
Similar or different?
I wonder if it'd be helpful to look at other definitions that moved in other bills over the past few years.
Forensic facility
That makes sense.
might be worth doing.
We've had many iterations, so.
Is this the first time it's really looking at it as held by DOC?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
It would be good to compare, because this is through the lens of DOC.
what was the bill last biennium?
I'm looking, hang on.
It's back 50, won't be that, back 57, no, won't be that low. Be higher up.
Let's see, in the last biennium, there was Act 27 and then 137.
That's 182,
So 27 was mostly a report back in a working group.
and what year was that, Act 27, what year was that?
2023.
Then,
Oh, if you're curious for a definition, as used in this section, forensic facility means a residential facility licensed as a therapeutic community residence, which is a license type that Dale licenses. For an individual with a mental condition or intellectual disability, if the General Assembly determines that commitment to a forensic facility is appropriate for an individual with an intellectual disability. That was a big discussion in Human Services, that intellectual disability might not be appropriate for a forensic facility. And I'm guessing they're probably having the same conversation now.
so that was in Act 27?
Yeah.
Which is that 89.
But I'm struck by how different that definition is when it's taken out of a correctional
Mhm.
context.
That's a horse of a different color there.
There's more. Who is charged with a crime of violence against another person and the individual is assessed not competent to stand trial or was adjudicated not guilty by reason of insanity, who requires treatment or programming within a secure setting for an extended period of time.
It's very different.
I like
Then
that one better.
I do too.
137. Hang
So
on.
that's Act 137 is.
Yep.
That last one wasn't, that was that.
That was Act
27.
27.
27.
This one's Act 137.
Of 2024, and I'm looking for a definition. I don't know if this one had a different definition.
What was that at?
Act 137, that was in 2024. That's when we did the renovations to
Yeah,
River Valley.
so that, I mean, this ended up not doing a recovery residence. I mean, a forensic facility.
Act 137 was 2024.
Yeah. That's when we did the renovations to River Valley Conference Committee and the Capitol Bill. We had to do that at the last minute because they allowed EIPs.
Okay, so this Act 137 from 2024, if I'm remembering correctly, it started off as a forensic facility bill in the Senate. And when it came here, the goals shifted. And the DMH testified that a lot of what they wanted to do or could use a forensic facility for, they could use the secure residential recovery for if they had certain changes in law. And so just to read you the purpose section, I think this sort of captures what they ended up doing instead of a forensic facility. Purpose of this act is to enable the Commissioner of Mental Health to seek treatment for individuals at a secure residential recovery facility, regardless of a previous order of hospitalization. Previously, you had to have an OH to do a secure residential recovery. And at a psychiatric residential treatment facility for youth without precluding the future development of a forensic facility. So this was saying, we're not saying no to a future forensic facility, but we're not doing it right now. It updates civil commitment procedures for individuals with intellectual disability. It authorized Dale to propose alternative options for secure community-based residents or residences to treat individuals who have been charged with a crime and found incompetent to stand trial or adjudicated not guilty by reason of insanity, who are in the commissioner's custody and who require a more secure level of care than is currently available, without precluding the future development of a forensic
Which
facility.
commission?
I'm assuming Dale, because this paragraph is about Dale. So I'm remembering that Human Services did spend quite a bit of time looking at civil commitment for individuals with intellectual disability. And that there are several, I mean, this is a long bill, it's 41 pages, but that there's a big portion of the bill that makes changes
Well, maybe that's
statutes.
worth comparing this bill, particularly with the Act 27 definition of forensic facility
Mhm.
and seeing the Act 137. Possibly.
I don't think 137 has a definition of forensic facility because ultimately they decided not to do one. I'm doing a word search and I'm not.
But is there anything else in 137?
In 137, there was a creation of a psychiatric residential treatment facility for youth, but I think that is very different in nature. Yeah.
So we're talking about what's a little different thinking. So,
I don't think so. So what this does is it makes multiple changes to the mental health statutes to make it easier for somebody to end up in a secure residential recovery facility because now they no longer have to have an OH, an order of hospitalization. So that means that if a judge thinks that their person only needs an order of non-hospitalization, they don't have such an acute need, then they can go right to the secure residential. And there was some discussion
Will
about,
they be charged with anything or is it just civil?
it could be either.
Could be either.
Yeah.
So you get to little level.
Yeah.
So it would be someone that could be charged with a criminal offense that could be sent to River Valley for
Yes.
an assessment. or evaluation.
If they have, if they meet the legal standard of a person in need of treatment. But as soon as that person no longer meets that standard, they could be released into the community. Whereas, the forensic facility proposal in front of you, after somebody is done receiving their mental health treatment and they no longer meet that clinical need, then they could be pulled back into a forensic facility, assuming they meet all the criteria.
So what's before us is currently the person could be released back to. Depending what the current coverage is. They reach out. I mean, they could have a high criminal, maybe not a listed crime, but they could have. They could have burglary with an occupied dwelling. Right? But they could be deemed that they need a competency evaluation. And it would be a non-hospital evaluation, correct?
So I think we have to have that line between what do we mean in the judicial criminal law context and what do we mean in the medical context. So if you're using competent, meaning not competent to stand trial, that would trigger an assessment as to whether the person meets the clinical standard of person in need of treatment, meaning they need medical care. So just because they're not competent to stand trial does not mean that they necessarily have the necessary are meeting the necessary medical threshold of needing involuntary care through DMH. Does that make sense? Sort of.
We're so used to dealing with criminal.
So now you've baited me into asking the dumb question. Existing, resisting. A 25-year-old cannot resist shoplifting gum from the store. They repeat. They just keep stealing gum
Mhm.
from the store. What do we do with that person? Obviously, they're not understanding or competent of understanding that they shouldn't be doing that.
Mhm.
But they're certainly not a harm to people,
Mhm.
other individuals. What do we do with in a situation like that?
Now, under current law,
Yeah,
I think it depends on their diagnosis. I mean, if that is an indication that triggers somebody to say, maybe this person needs psychiatric help, are they a person in need of treatment? Then potentially they could be involuntarily committed to a hospital or a placement in the community. But it could be that they're doing that is not related to mental illness. It could be related to a developmental disability. It could be, in which case, that option through DMH is not available. Somebody could have a mental illness and commit a crime, but their level of acuity doesn't meet the threshold, in which case they don't come in involuntarily to the DMH system. So
I'm back to my question.
Yeah.
What does Vermont do with people who would be, and maybe it's too obtuse, but I can imagine there are numbers of situations where people just are not capable of understanding it's not okay to steal gum from the grocery store.
Mhm.
Not hurting anybody, but, and it's a tangent, but it's not a tangent in that to restrain somebody for that,
Mhm.
they certainly need rehabilitation, if you will, any training that you can't do that, but and so the population actually could theoretically grow if it's beyond the bodily injury. I'm not trying to make it
It's
work
just
on, I'm
retail
just trying to get
threat. It's retail threat. That's what you're talking about.
or as just an example, there would be plenty of other ones. I mean, just breaking things, you know, destruction of public property. You know, I don't want to take the tangent, but I'm trying to get a handle on what do we do with these people right now and what do we want to do with them in the absence of a full-blown forensic facility.
Mhm. Well, remember for the forensic facility proposal in front of you, a person has to have committed or alleged to have committed a very serious
Yes.
crime.
Yes,
So that's not a very serious crime.
right.
If somebody were to be tried for stealing 3 packs of gum, that, you know, that doesn't seem like it would be worth a prosecutor's time. They might just do a referral to a community mental health agency.
Right.
If somebody, you know, I realize you're not asking about gum, but you're asking about something that could be more serious. So if somebody was tried and they don't have, it's very clear that they don't have the mental capacity,
Right.
the competency to be tried, then right now, there couldn't be a trial because they're not competent to stand trial.
But they're not a harm to anybody.
But they're not a harm to anyone. So there might be
Yes.
referrals to
They're a pest.
to
They're
to a
pests.
mental health provider or to a community, a specialized service agency in the community. My guess is there's not a one path or one track fits all. It depends how this individual's behavior rises to somebody's attention.
Right.
Yeah.
And I understand it's an extreme case, but we're on a spectrum here that says someplace along the line, society, it's just too broad, says we can't let this person just be out on their own. And where do we put them? How do we help them? And I know right now, we're just looking at serious life sentences.
Serious crimes. It's not your misdemeanors.
Bigger question.
We're not gonna solve that today.
No,
So let's get back to the forensic facility. So if you could, for us, at least one thing could be to pull the definition of what was previously done.
Especially in Act 27.
Was that definition in Acts 27, was that session law or statute? That's session law.
I think it was with regard to a working group and a report. Yeah, so this was the definition was in a section called Working Group on Policies Pertaining to Individuals with Intellectual Disability Who are Criminal Justice Involved. So that, you know, I know that's not your focus, and I'll remind Human Services that this work was done, but there was a group that looked at this very specific issue 2 years ago. So it might be worth taking a look to see what type of recommendations were issued at that time.
And when will they do to issue that? The end
Oh.
of the year?
That we have received that for sure. December 1, 2023.
December 1, 2023.
Yep. And let me just cut and paste the definition while we're talking about it, and I'll send
Do
it
we know if
to
the
Tate.
committee reviewed it?
Human Services. Oh, yeah, I remember it.
Okay, no, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I remember when that came back, and I'm almost positive that it received a lot of testimony.
And that would have been in the session of 24.
There's the report, 14 pages here.
Yeah, do you have that, Tate? Report, why don't you send it to Tate,
Yeah, you got it?
and then Tate can send it to us.
I'm sending you the definition.
In accordance with Act 57, section, yeah, that, you know,
No,
57?
Act 57?
I'm going to Act 27.
What is Act 57?
forensic working group report
What year would that have been?
was 2014.
Oh, Jesus, 24.
Oh, no, the 24, sorry.
There was one in 24 as
This,
well.
no, this is 24, not 14. I'm,
Yeah, but
yeah,
Yeah,
we
but
didn't-
you're at Act 57.
I wonder if that was a typo. What is the topic intellectual
Act
disabilities?
57, section 6,
Yeah, that's a typo, I bet.
Joint Legislative Oversight Committee, the chairs of House Corrections and Institutions.
So that's a little different.
The forensic care
It's
working.
a typo in the report,
Because it did come back.
because it is section 6.
Yeah, report date January 15th, 2023. It's got to be it,
Is it
right?
specific to developmental disabilities?
Competency restoration laws. 24 members tasked with addressing several large issues confronting Vermont regarding the intersection of criminal justice, mental health care, civil systems.
I think it's something
24
different.
members.
Within Dale, yeah.
Both in Dale.
I'll send it to Tate. You can. send it
So
to them.
Act, you have Act 57 and 24.
Let me take a look.
This little rabbit hole we got on.
It is.
No, that's aquatic nuisance control.
You can clearly cross that one off the list.
Oh, no, that might be 25, 26. Hold on. I don't think that's it though.
57.
That was 25. I'm in 20.
No, it's aquatic nuisance.
Is it?
In the 23-24 biennium.
Yeah, so it might be a total.
I'm kind of wondering if that was just a typo in the report.
Did the makeup of the working group sound
I
familiar
can tell you.
to what you had in Act 27?
Oh, just my email isn't working. So I can't send it.
Um,
If you Google Tate Forensic Working Group Report Vermont, you'll find it.
and, do you have the list of the membership? Disability Law Project of Legal Aid, Vermont Legal Aid, Disabilities Development Council, Green Mountain Self Advocates, Vermont Care Partners, Vermont Crisis Intervention Network, Dale,
People.
Commissioner of Mental Health.
Yeah, I mean, it's most of the same people, DOC Commissioner,
Oh, DOC, I don't think.
Dale.
it's-
EGS, Judiciary,
You have a whole
States
different,
Attorney Sheriffs.
this is
No,
totally
it's
different.
different. What do you have? Let's see here.
Forensic Working Group Report.
137?
Can you just Google that?
Yeah. Supposedly it went to us.
January 15th of 23.
23. So that could be required in 2022 legislation.
On or before August 1st of 22, Department of Mental Health would submit a final report addressing any gaps in the current mental health and criminal justice system structure related to individuals incompetent to stand trial or not guilty by reason of insanity. Any opportunities to improve public safety, address treatment needs. Competency restoration models used in other states.
Doesn't sound too far off. Yeah.
Models in other states to determine public safety risks. Due process requirements for defendants. And then January 15th, 22, the department, which is what the Department of Mental Health. Submit a preliminary report to us, Healthcare and Judiciary. And then on or before the 15th of February 22 would submit their final report. Well, we didn't work on it.
No.
Can't send that to Tate.
Well,
Wait, which one are, I have several of them, but which?
Oh, no.
This is Act
Yeah, you do.
57. This is Act 57, Section 6.
The forensic working group. one?
Yeah, and if you go down, report date is January 15th.
Yes, I see that.
So that was done in 22. Then we had Act 27 done in 23. And then we had Act 137 done in 24.
Continuum of care rather than a binary jail hospital choices. Binary is my word. I can certainly understand why people are frustrated at the thought that this might lead to another study, given the number of studies and reports that will come back.
That's what I'm saying. The
Pull
different
from some of
areas
these studies?
I gotta think so. We have to rely. We have to. We have
Looks like there's
to.
a PowerPoint presentation and everything that they had after the study, so it'd be good to look at that.
Katie can't wait to write it again, seeing that she's done it for the last 15 years.
No, we don't want a report like this.
Some of it backs, I'm just skimming it, but some of it backs up what we're concerned about, right? The health and justice collaboration versus the DOC context. Clinical, legal, rather than security and continuum of care. Again, I'm just skimming it. I don't want to necessarily.
Well, they do have some recommendations. Prosecutorial notification competency enact a statute that requires competency services be provided to a defendant who is adjudged incompetent and requires the defendant to participate in a competency program and establish a statutory framework, which should include standards and processes for diverting those with lesser crimes and identifying an entity or agency responsible for bridging the gap between the mental health and criminal justice systems. Well, they're bridging that gap through DOC.
Right. So to be fair, the bill does try to respond to this report. It just takes it X steps forward and lands it in DOC, which, you know, is at the core of my concerns.
Well, it's the easy way out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no reason to think these people wouldn't come to the exact same conclusion if you got them in a room, so.
Comments that were received by DMH after the works group's final meeting. Individuals Jack McCullough from Vermont Legal Aid, Lindsay Owen from Disability Rights. Certain members would like it noted that because these comments came in after the meetings, they did not have a chance to review or respond to them. So yeah, there's some comments linked to Jack and to Lindsay. I don't know what those comments are right now. I'm gonna click, oh, I can't even click on the link for some reason. So Jack McCullough and Lindsay Owens supposedly had a reaction to this working group report, but it doesn't look like I can access the summary comments from Vermont Legal Aid.
And how many were in the group? Was that the group
20.
24?
24, that was quite a few.
Did
Yeah.
he testify upstairs today?
Jack
That's amazing.
Pretty sure.
testified here. Who was on?
It's on the agenda in healthcare.
Yeah, I thought so.
So you had everybody covered. Dale, DOC, BGS, Judiciary, State's Attorneys, AG, Defender General, Director of Healthcare Reform, someone from Legal Aid, Vermont Cares, Vermont Medical Society, 3 crime victim representatives, Mental Health Ombudsman, Vermont Association of Hospitals, 3 individuals with lived experience, Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council. That's who you had. You had in GMH staff, you had everybody. That thing was huge. Anyway, we do digress, do we not?
I don't want it either.
No, but I think it
But no.
reiterates what we've been saying, that there
So
have been multiple proposals.
Yes.
I think we really give, there's 3, definitely 2. I'm not sure if there was a report with Act 137. I think we should spend some time just perusing those and see what we can glean from that.
Years, 137.
I'm looking to see if there's a
137
report.
Was 20.
Well, there was a report on competency restoration program on 137, but it was a fiscal estimate. The estimate shall include whether and how to serve individuals with intellectual disability in a competency restoration program. Varying options dependent upon which underlying charges are eligible for court-ordered competency restoration and costs associated with establishing a residential program or court-ordered competency restoration programming may be performed on an individual who is neither in the custody of the Commissioner of Mental Health nor in the Commissioner of Dale. So that was getting at one point, one of the proposals was that there would only be competency restoration if somebody was already committed to the custody of mental health or the of Dale, meaning that they have to meet that threshold in statute. So this proposal in front of you is different in that the person doesn't have to meet that medical threshold to be eligible for the forensic facility. But at one time, the proposal was tied to that.
What they now need to meet is a criminal standard of certain crimes and health without bail. And that they're not receiving treatment in the hospital.
Mhm.
And that they're incompetent to stand trial. It's a whole different standard that kicks them in. The criminal standard, not a health standard. Right?
For competency? Yep.
It's a criminal standard. Puts them in instead of a health.
It could be both. It could be either too, right?
I don't think it's an or an and, it's an and.
Sorry, I missed that
Could it
question.
be either.
Not competent or
It's an
No,
and.
because this bill only does criminal.
It's an and. So you have to be charged with an offense punishable by life.
Yeah, yeah.
Held without bail.
risk of dangerousness.
Create substantial risk of bodily injury
Staying
to
bubble
another
gum.
person and currently
It's gotta be important.
not receiving treatment through order of hospitalization.
Mhm.
And it's been found not competent to stand trial. That's what triggers this one. The old ones were based on health, mental health,
Yeah, well,
medical.
yeah, medical, because Dale has sort of we've been talking a lot about mental health, but Dale has, I don't know if I'd call it a parallel program, but they have Act 248. And so if somebody is not competent, somebody with intellectual disability is not competent to stand trial, but they pose a serious public safety risk to others, then they're committed to the custody of the Commissioner of Dale. And then they're placed in a secure community setting. So that could be like a 2-on-1 placement in a residential facility that has alarms on the doors, and the person has like a locator bracelet, something like that.
And they're under Dale.
They're under Dale. But that's,
And the concern upstairs in Human Services is with this particular language, we could be sweeping up some of those folks into a
potentially.
correction. That's the concern.
To the extent that they have one of those triggering crimes, then potentially they could be. But what is currently excluded that this would pull in is individuals who would otherwise meet that profile, but who are not guilty by reason of insanity versus not competent to stand trial. I would love to be corrected if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Act 248 doesn't pick up that population. Yeah.
Just the incompetence.
Yeah.
Well, so let's keep going through. I'm looking at the time. Let's
Okay.
keep going through page 15, section 4. At least we have some food for thought, right?
Probably more than we want.
Yeah.
I keep wondering if it would be helpful to step back and sort of think about those guiding questions. No. Okay. And maybe I'm taking you too off target, but I always try to think, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And then,
I like that.
you know, like very basic questions. Who are the people? Who is administering the program? And then the what are the services in the program? And sort of start with those. If you can answer some of those basic policy questions, I feel like you could maybe build language from there.
So can you help us with the who, what, and where?
I could put a list together for you.
You did that for us.
I know, I never know if that's helpful or if that
It was
takes us the, you know,
Did
on a
everything
tangent.
the list
Okay.
that we asked for?
And part of the challenge, I could make you a list, but part of the challenge is, you know, for example, the who. I don't know if that's important to this committee as it is to the committees upstairs. What will be very important to this committee is who is administering the program, where is the program, what kind of structural or clinical decisions are being made about the program that impact the facility.
Who makes those?
Yeah.
Who makes those? Because going through the language. So it's the Commissioner of Corrections, the bottom of page 15, would establish and operate the forensic facility. For the secure evaluation, I don't know what that means, secure evaluation. Treatment and care of the individual. So it's all under DOC.
Mhm.
Which is problematic. But who should do that if it's not DOC?
Well, and if we substitute the agency there, how do we safeguard that the agency isn't going to just hand it to DOC? Right? That's because technically DOC is within the agency.
I could argue DOC is the right place because of the small population that we are dealing with because of life sentences. Successful, I could argue that that's why DOC in this case is, as opposed to people who are living on the street, they haven't committed any crimes, or my 25-year-old that just likes to steal bubble gum. I mean, we're looking at a very specific slice of individuals that need help.
The only issue there, Kevin,
And
is you wouldn't argue with Katie because she's ledge counsel.
No,
You could argue with
I'm
us.
just looking at her. I'm not arguing with Katie, you know. No.
Making sure.
Yeah, no, I'm right. I'm not arguing with Katie at all. I'm trying to get a handle on what we're actually struggling with, because there's a bigger question, but we're only looking at one little tiny slice.
Well, we're looking at a tiny slice where there's been some offenses that are punishable by life. Or
Don't make any big decisions.
something like that. And they're being
Won't be
held in
decided.
jail.
Well, they haven't in 10 years, so I would want to make it in 5 minutes.
They're being held without bail and deemed not competent. So once they gain competency, the process to restore competencies in DOC's world. That's the issue. That's the issue. And then if they do restore competency, they go to trial. And then they're convicted or not. The issue is if they're beyond DOC doing the evaluation and the treatment, which is not appropriate for DOC to do that. If they cannot restore competency, then they're just held, which could be a constitutional issue. And that's why the House Judiciary has had some offerings.
Right.
So they could be released back out to the community, even though they may have severe crime. They could be released back.
Unless they're in a danger too. another person.
Well,
Which they have been.
unless the state's attorney has not provided clear and convincing evidence.
Right.
Which is pretty high standard. So they- I kind of like your idea, Katie, of putting all this stuff, but I know that's not good to you.
I don't have to make a long list. I think just, I'm happy to do it if that would be helpful. And I think just focusing on some of the high level decision points is going to start informing the rest of your choices. So if you know, can identify where the program should live and who should be pulled into the program, where it should live, meaning who's going to administer it, I think a lot of your decisions will start to fall more easily from there.
That makes sense.
That's why I would say you're the best.
What else can you walk us through quickly? I don't,
So I don't know that these are questions for you, but this subsection B lists clinical parameters of what would be part of a forensic facility. And this almost might be something that the two committees upstairs have to
yeah,
fine tune and then communicate with you about what is the building aspects. I don't have the right words, fit up aspects that are necessary to
Facility.
make that happen. But you might have a sense, with your expertise in corrections about, understanding whether it's possible to have a standalone unit or if it's possible to have a separate standalone facility within a correctional facility. For this purpose, I think those are questions that you're probably in the best position to answer.
I think what would be really difficult in the corrections world is number one,
What page are you on?
page 16.
Therapeutic recovery-oriented trauma-informed environment comparable to a community-based residential treatment setting, which is interesting because when you say it out loud, that sort of sounds like what I described for the Act 248 population.
This was an amendment from Senator Lyons and Senator Harrison.
It was the two committees. Mhm.
And reading that, there's no way that being an incarcerated setting is going to give you a trauma-informed environment comparable to a community-based residential treatment setting.
Especially if you're in Gen Pop.
And then if you're gonna have the ability to separate the population by sex or gender, you're doing two facilities, if you're doing it in a correctional facility.
You might be doing more units than that if you're separating people by diagnosis. Also, this is not my expertise, but I anticipate you'll hear something about, individuals' acuity or, if there are certain people who can't be mixed in it within a certain population. You might need flexibility to separate certain individuals who would otherwise be on the same unit or plan or however it's decided.
And then implement staff qualifications, licensure, training, supervision. This is all under DOC. It's all under it's a different world for them. I mean, yes, they provide security. So some folks, that are correctional officers are trained and supervision requirements, but it's very different dealing with security in a facility versus providing mental health services, providing services to folks with TBI, providing services to folks with dementia. And yes, they do have folks with dementia there now. They do have folks with TBI. They were competent to stand trial at the time that they had the conviction and the sentence. They're just aging out in the facility. So do you commingle the forensic population with those folks? I just don't, I mean, it's just asking so much of DOC. And then ensure they're a registered nurse, which they do have registered nurses who are licensed pursuant to 26 VSA, chapter 28 positions. They do have that, but it's under WellPAC. They contract. And then to do the assessment and treatment planning, I just think it's way beyond DOC. Or feeding,
It's a little warm in here.
It's not warm.
just open up the window.
It is warm. Well, I guess it's kind of like.
Well, turn the heat on. And
Well, it's, to me, if you don't mind,
No,
It's-
weigh in, please.
it's a little frustrating because at the end of the day, it seems to me that some people in the committee who don't want this to happen inside a correctional facility. And this bill's written for this to happen inside a correctional facility. So we have a structural issue here. And we're talking about all this other stuff. And until I don't know, I feel like there's a little bit of, we're going in circles, and I kind of feel like we need to all be honest with ourselves about that
Reality.
or hurdle. And what sometimes, which I totally get what that the people who are having a hard time with that, it seems like this is a big turning point, or could be, in taking care of these people. However, I also keep hearing from really wonderful people that I trust in the state, that work for the state, that are begging us to make a decision to help this move forward. And so people either have to find something in themselves to compromise about this, or we are going to spin this off another year.
Well, Sean, you put me in an awkward situation agreeing with you. But my take is that I do know there's some very, very strong feelings about the corrections facility, and I don't disagree. But I could move forward probably easier than some, with potential language saying that we'll do this, but we want something in place that we have a plan to move it somewhere else by a certain day, or to at least study. So I want something that's better, but I wouldn't hold it up trying for perfect.
Okay.
But I do, because I don't like it, but everybody keeps telling us it's okay. But I would like to see it separate someday. And I don't know where you put the language for that, or if anybody would even care other than me or whatever, but I definitely wouldn't hold it up.
Having Brian.
And that's where I guess my thinking was going when I was asking about the check back, is that we do something, but then we see what the results of that something was. Because if we bring 6 people into this situation, and a year and a half from now, they've been resolved one way or the other in a timely, humane fashion, then that's a step in the right direction.
You
If
have
it's-
5 more people. who are-
Understand, but we learn from what is going on, and besides the other reality, and I know I'm broken record, but we don't have $100 million to build a separate facility that's going to allow us to do it the way we'd like to do it.
Yes, it's about $1.5 million per bed for these kind of facilities.
that's why I asked for the back, come back to see what we've done in a period of time. Because we've got to know if we're successful and if changes, and that's why I also asked if the groups could stay together through this process. We were all kind of like going, okay, we're done. And that's why I said, I think that, the groups that have worked on this really need to stick together till we get this right.
Brian and Clark?
I don't know if it's useful. I guess it's sort of in response to what Sean Sweeney was saying, but you need for all parties to come to the table and be willing to compromise for that to work. And I think we've been told by DOC exactly what this is going to look like. And there wasn't a whole lot of room for movement there that I heard. I heard that by providing therapy is therapeutic. I heard that it's already trauma informed. I heard that it can be a separate wing or Gen Pop and it doesn't matter. So I don't hear a lot of room for improvement there.
Well, what I like about that, Brian, is that kind of gets more down to like an ask.
It could be. And then just because we're talking about it, I mean, this notion of a check back. Okay, but to be cynical, I mean, if this works to any degree, there's no, you can check back, but you know, the answer is to be this is already happening.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a fait accompli at that point.
Well, true. True, but I hated the fact that
Well,
everyone
my
was
ideas.
so we're done with those.
Agreed.
You've got to come to see that what we've done, hopefully half of it. I would hope fully.
So to me, that's a postmortem. I mean, I don't disagree, Mary, but yeah.
And I agree with you. So,
Sorry, Mary.
go ahead.
I'd like to keep going forward on this. I agree. I think we need to be going forward. We've had too many study groups.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing any compromise from the administration on this. I'm hearing a very explicit idea for what it's going to be, and everything else just feels like, you know, the illusion of public input with the rulemaking, with a preconceived notion that is a 180 on what the administration's position was a couple of years ago, right? So like, I look at and I did a lot of research over the weekend there, every psychiatric group who works in forensics, almost that I could find, is very clear that prison is not a therapeutic environment to restore competency. So that's my red line. You know, I think I could live with this bill if there was one line in it that said it shall not be housed within the walls of an existing correctional facility, and give the administration all the flexibility they want to come back with an idea that sort of fits that. But
That's fine. My thing is going back to what Sean originally said, which is if we don't all come to some kind of agreement, we can say that we'll eventually, we are going in circles. So we're going to continue. And it's not just us, 4 committees. When you talk to people on those 4 committees, and it's going to be a circle. Are we going to get to the end of May and have nothing but a circle? Or are we going to agree, this is the path all of us are going to go down, and it's just a point? That's all.
yeah, I mean, and if we want to move forward, this is the way not to do it, because they've already written that lawsuit up there. It'll be delivered by the time the ink is dry on the pen that signs this bill. It will.
Well, so then I almost want to like move that we either go with what actually a little move,
You got a motion in this committee?
No. I'm not making a motion.
You're
no.
doing a.
But I'm suggesting that what Brian said is that do we say, do we take that idea and Connor's idea and say, yeah, we're down with this except for this. And I don't know how you go by me. I'm still figuring this all out, but it seems like that's where that's our bottom line, kind of,
So we put out the parameters of what a forensic facility should look like, and we tell the administration to come back next year with a plan on where you're gonna put it.
Yeah.
Not in a prison.
Right, it'll be governed, the governance is going to be by the agency of human services, not an individual department within the agency.
Of course.
We should just say plainly what we want,
I'm
Well, that's
still
my point.
concerned that human
And realizing
services.
that we're not gonna get Medicaid.
We're not gonna get Medicaid.
We'll get it anyways,
No, I
Yeah.
know, but
And what I'm
I realize that
concerned
that's the case.
is human services will come back and say. in
We're
the-
gonna be working with them. We're gonna be working with them.
Right, no, I know.
And what was say your thing again, Brian?
Which part? It was all brilliant.
Just like what did it boil down to? Is that they told us what it was going to be without any kind of movement, right? Without any
It was my typical.
compromise.
Yes,
Okay, so it's kind of a mix.
I understand your desire to meet in the middle and make some sausage. I'm just not sure you have a partner at the table.
Right. Okay,
So,
Could I say a slightly different way? I think they're saying this is the only viable option we see. And if we take this, we can provide more services than we currently are. Because you need to tell us to spend money to bring in, at this point, WellPath and their extra clinical support. And right now we can't do that, or we don't do that, or whatever.
it's gonna be a cost to DOC's budget.
Right.
I think people need to be realistic about that.
I think that's what hit me is they kept saying we can deal with it.
They're
And
not
it's like,
gonna
no,
do
they can't do.
It's gonna.
There's
remain
positions,
pretty
there's other things that they've got to incorporate into this too, would have to make it successful. So it's not just absorbing it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think last week the testimony was they do not have a psychologist or psychiatrist on
Right.
staff.
Right.
I've been talking to frontline employees. They say, save us. They don't want this.
simple. You have to talk to them.
EOC, yeah.
Yeah, see, people are not at liberty to come out and really speak on this, that's part of the other issue. Katie, I know the time is running out, if you got some thoughts here that you can.
I've been writing
Center
down.
principal.
Questions down.
Could you just draft up a new draft of that based on our comments?
Facility.
What would be helpful for you? I hear that you're moving away from a DOC run facility. It sounds like you're moving towards an AHS facility that is AHS generally and not designated to a specific department. I hear that you're wanting to put some parameters in statute and then tell the administration to come back and based on these criteria, present a proposal about where this would go and what it would look like, how it would be staffed. I'm sort of thinking through some type of contingency that all of the judicial language wouldn't take effect until there's a facility. Contingencies are always very tricky. I just like to remind everyone that we have to be crystal clear and what the contingency is and how we know when it's met. So I don't know if you want to go in that direction, but that's a possibility.
Well, we've got to be very clear about the contingency, because if we're not, they're gonna start passing folks. That meet qualifying conditions, whatever those may be. If you could just do some real broad questions to help us.
Using these as guiding factors, I will do that.
And the other thing, and I don't know if the committee is still open to this or not, the one thought that circled around a while back was you could have a building within on the campus of a correctional facility, that the building was operated by DOC to provide that security, but the staffing and programming is under the agency, is not DOC.
Right. Sure. I think we all agreed on that before. Yeah.
That there's some thoughts there. That's gonna be a cost to build or renovate or do something. The governance of it would not be DOC. The governance that we're seeing under the bill, it's all DOC. That's the issue, is the governance.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we are. I don't know if that helps Katie or not. I don't know if that will help upstairs or not.
Yeah, great work for you, right?
I did not like her.
Okay.
It's beating a dead horse, but the flip side of your concern, if we do this, they're gonna begin housing these individuals. The flip side is if we don't do this, where are they housing these individuals?
They already have.
In DOC.
That's a rationale for doing it the way they're doing it here. So. Anything else, Katie, before we break up for the day?
Thanks,
Thank
Katie.
you, Katie. I
Um,
know it was kind of disjointed. That's good or bad. But, so if you could kind of do those broad questions outline and then circle back to tape
Mhm.
on your schedule.
Okay.
I know we're open Thursday afternoon, right?
Yeah, for a little bit.
Let me take a look now.
Plug these.
Oh, okay. Oh, but you're on the floor. That's why I'm open.
Yes.
At 1 o'clock, we're on the floor, but I don't think there's gonna be much.
2?
2 o'clock?
We have ADS at 2, but maybe after that.
How long will that be?
An hour.
Okay.
2:30? Okay.
ADS.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, folks. That's for Wi-Fi.
I mean, no one else. It's
I'm
closer to an hour.
gonna
Do you
go
think
out
it's
and live.
gonna be an hour?
No.
No, we're gonna see things.
I know.
They're, oh, I know too. I guarantee ADS is gonna wanna leave after.
Thank you, Katie.
Have a nice day. Thank you.
Steve,
Yeah, you're welcome.
I would
Have a good
suggest
day.
that everyone.
Thank you. You too.
Molly's reception.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks. We'll be back here downstairs tomorrow morning,
Oh, yes.
8:30.
Yes,
It's a big lady. Why don't we just meet kind of,
Big lady.
on the sidewalk here.
yeah, on the sidewalk over here, down here.
Okay.
8:30, then we'll figure out who's driving what.
Nice.
Bring shoes to work, walk outside in the Windsor. That's gonna be more important. Cause I don't know the
Yeah.
conditions it is down here. So it's not open. And I don't know what the temperature is, but in Windsor, they do have to keep the place heated to a certain amount so the water doesn't freeze, but it's gonna be chilly in those buildings.
Like 50.
Right. It'll be 50 outside, so dress accordingly. Okay,
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
and we'll get better directions to Windsor. So what I'm more worried about. Somebody can always put in GPS.